I meet a lot of people who are afraid about talking about budgeting. So they're very insecure about it. And a lot of times they are insecure about it because they're scared of talking to people in their actual life about their finances. And I'm like, why are you not talking to your partner or to your roommate or, whoever it is? Why are you not talking to them about what's going on with you financially? And they're like, oh, well, I'm embarrassed, or oh, I'm insecure, oh, I'm afraid of what they'll think, or they're, going to be disappointed in me. I have the same thought pretty much every single time, and that's is, are you so embarrassed temporarily that it's worth it to never tell them and drag that out and prolong the pain, the insecurity, the suffering, and you're hurting financially, so you have to tell them, no, you can't go out, or else go into debt. And the debt hurts you, and the not going out hurts them, and it hurts you. You constantly having to say no just makes them get to the point where they stop inviting you. But you going into debt makes you more and more feel the pressure to say no. You're prolonging and amplifying how bad it is by not talking to them, by not being real or honest with them. I have before in my life been at extremely bleak points, and there was a time in my adulthood where I was starving and I didn't tell anyone. For a year and a half, I prolonged my suffering by trying to act like to everyone that it was fine, that it was good even. Oh, look, I look so good, right? No, you look scrawny like a skeleton. Looking good, it means having a little bit of muscle. I didn't even have any muscle. I was like very, very unhealthy. And I didn't want anyone to know how bad it was because I thought they would look down on me and think I was pitiful and whatever. But in reality, the moment that I talked to the first person about it, it was my girlfriend at the time, she immediately was like, oh, you're eligible for food stamps, and suddenly I wasn't starving anymore. And without the starvation, I could function better. It's amazing how much a prolonged lack of food really affects your cognitive abilities and your abilities to function in your body. But I had been avoiding going out. I had lost multiple friends because I literally couldn't afford to go out. And when I was open with one of my siblings about the situation, he was like, dude, you can come out, I'll pay for you. I can afford that right now, and I know if you could afford it and I was not in a financially good place, you'd pay for me. We're brothers, that's what we do. And I had been so scared to say something that I had spent a year and a half miserable, starving, and prolonging suffering that didn't need to be prolonged. Missing out on social interaction, and I'm an introvert. I don't need a ton of social interaction, but I am a tribal species, because I'm human. We're all created for community. All of us humans, we need a little social interaction. According to research, the biggest thing that adds longevity to your life is having close interpersonal relationships. It adds 14 years on average to the lifespan of a man and 7 years on average to the lifespan of a woman. The biggest thing you can do for your personal longevity is have close interpersonal relationships. So even me, an introvert, a person who spends a lot of time not being socially interactive, I still need some. Even though it's a little draining and tiring, I still need that because I'm human. And I was denying myself that. I wasn't just starving for food. I was starving for affirmation from other human beings. I was starving for acceptance, and I was starving for people to treat me nicely because I was not treating myself nicely at all. You can have the temporary embarrassment and the awkwardness, which is very true and very valid and very real, of having that conversation. That conversation is not a comfortable conversation to have. I'm not doing well financially. It sucks. I can't afford to do this. It's horrible. It's a horrible conversation, but it's a conversation. And then you can move forward. It's temporary discomfort so that you're not dragging out how miserable it is. You do it, you deal with it, and then you can start taking steps forward. And the other person knows, so they're not putting a ton of pressure on you. I had a cousin who was getting married. I have a ridiculously large extended family, and the cousin was getting married, and I thought it was outside. So I wore a nicer but more outdoorsy thing. Well, I got there and everyone else was in like suits, ties, dresses, whatever. And a couple of people were like, why would you wear that to a wedding? But anyone who knew my situation was just glad that I had showed up. They were just grateful that I was there. My cousin was very happy that I came. And it's the people who are closest to you whose opinion matters to you. The strangers who are like, it's like, whatever. I'm not here for you. I'm here for my cousin who's getting married today, and my cousin's thrilled. Because my cousin knows that I can't afford a ton of stuff. My cousin knows I can't afford to rent a tuxedo. It takes pressure off, and it lets you interact in the way that you can. And eventually, that situation can be temporary. The other big thing about having that awkward conversation and being able to feel like you can move forward is it also helps you free up your mind that it's horrible, I'm financially trapped. It opens a window for some of that pressure to leak out of, and for you to feel like, okay, everyone knows, or everyone who's important and who needs to know knows, it's gonna be okay. And since it's gonna be okay, it feels more like you can make momentum. It feels less like you're entrapped. And you are more capable of noticing opportunities for your financial situation to maybe improve a little. When you aren't so completely consumed by the embarrassment, by the insecurity, by the distress, it frees up some of your emotional and mental energy to invest in something that maybe could help you. But you don't have anything left over to give toward helping yourself when you're just trying to contain this giant, horrifyingly embarrassing secret. It's a very important thing to be real and to be honest, not just with yourself, although that's extremely important, but to be real and truthful with the people involved in your life. Because you could lose some of those people. Some of the friends that I lost, I've never gotten back again. Because I just kept not showing up to stuff, and I didn't tell them it was because of financial troubles. And we've never been able to mend those bridges. When you are feeling fulfilled in a relationship, it's usually when someone is trusting you, or when you are trusting someone else. And that means being vulnerable. That means asking for help, or at least letting them know what your situation is so that they aren't pressuring you to spend money that they know you don't have. If they don't know you don't have it, they might ask you to spend it. My cousin could have, if she didn't know about my situation, could have been like, hey, rent a suit, rent a tuxedo, come to my wedding. And then I would have felt pressured to do that, to magically come up with that money. But because she knew the situation, she never even asked. I just showed up. It's very important to be real and be honest. Trying to keep up with an image that you're better off than you actually are, or that you can keep up with all of the stuff. You know, people saying, oh, hey, I'm going on this trip, come with. Sorry, I can't afford that. It sucks. I wish I could, but I can't afford that. But I would love to spend time with you in another way. For example, I couldn't go to the eclipse viewing. I couldn't afford it. So I made it up at another time. I was like, you know I'm getting paid a bunch more during the summer because I'm going to take this other job. I'm already guaranteed the job. So at the end of summer, I'll do this with you instead. And we went to the zoo and stuff like that in Chicago. I couldn't go to the eclipse, but I could go visit and I could go do that when I had the money. There's so much less pressure and stress there. There's understanding. And when you are vulnerable and you tell someone the truth, they feel like you gave them a gift. Think about when a little kid's been having a really hard time, or maybe the kid came from like a bad foster home, or maybe the kid came from a bad environment. When that kid finally trusts you, when you finally get that little nugget of, warmth from them, or a hug, or a kiss on the cheek, man, there is nothing more precious or valuable. You feel completely amazed and in awe. It is absolutely fulfilling. When someone tells you their big, vulnerable secret, man, you cherish that. You realize just how much of a friend you are to them. You realize just how important you are to them, just how meaningful you are in their life, that they would share this with you, that they would tell you this thing that's obviously hard for them. And maybe you don't have the money to help with their situation. Maybe you don't have the functionality in your own finances to make their financial situation better. But you still feel the impact of them being real with you. When you yourself trust someone with information that is a little hard to say, maybe you tell them a really sad story from your childhood. Maybe you tell them how emotionally scarred you are from feeling like a disappointment to so-and-so. Maybe you tell them about your finances. You deepen the bond that you have with the person that you're telling that to. Now, don't harp on it forever. Have one conversation about it and let it rest. And unless they happen to forget for some reason, you don't need to bring it up again. I have seen people who really are so happy about the response and the caring and the compassion and the warmth and the friendship that they get kind of like, oh, well, I want to talk about it again. I want to complain about it again because, I really, really love the feeling of your support. And that can cheapen how deep of a vulnerability it was. The more you go on and on and on about it and have multiple conversations, even in a month about it, the more it's not this big, precious, grand gem. It's like sprinklings of some dust. And it's like, okay, I get it. I guess it wasn't really that big of a deal because you talk about it all the time. So be a little careful not to be so completely drowning in the bliss of having someone treat you nicely when you tell them something you were scared to tell them, that you kind of go overboard with continually going on and on and on about it, because it feels really good when you tell someone something vulnerable and they respond in a kind or a comforting way. It does. It's not just something that they cherish because they realize how important it was to you, but you cherish it because they didn't do something cruel. We have this weird fear of, like, the people in our life who are the closest to us, that at some point they could turn into our enemy at the drop of a hat if we told them this one thing. And if they consistently are showing that that's not how they are, it's the odds are likely that that's not actually what's going to happen. Now, it is possible that things like that can happen, but usually it takes a really extreme secret, not a I'm having financial trouble secret. It depends on who it is, but the majority of the time, it's still better to be honest. Because if they give you that negative reaction, at least you know. At least you know not to waste any more of your energy into that particular relationship. At least you're aware now of what they're going to do and how they're going to act. You tell them you're having a financially hard time, and immediately the next 2 days later, they're like, oh, hey, we're gonna have a big night out, get a new outfit, and you're like, did you not hear me like 2 days ago when okay, I guess I know where your mind is at, and I guess I know how real our relationship is. And you can at least know. Telling the truth is better than not telling the truth. It's disappointing when that happens, for sure. But even that disappointment can be temporary. And not telling and just holding on to it, it can be indefinite. Some people, it lasts them their whole lives. They never ever stop. And then after they die, their kids are like, holy crap, the sheer volume of debt. How many guys have in the past presented themselves as successful, entrepreneurs, whatever, businessmen, and then the widow, after the guy dies, is like, holy crap, the debt. Why didn't he ever tell me? Why did my husband never tell me? How many guys find out the hard way, when they weren't looking, their partner was spending all the money. And no wonder there's no money for bills. But they didn't ever communicate about it. How many people have been robbed by their kids? How many parents have made their kids go out and work and then took in all the money? Like, there's tons and tons of examples. And it's always a horrible conversation to have. But it's hopefully one conversation, instead of an indefinite, years-long suffering.